All right. Well, I think we are live. This thing always gives me a bit of a lag, but I believe we
Looks
are.
like it.
It's Monday, February 23rd, and this is Solid Ground Live, the live stream that we do every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which I think is 1 p.m. Eastern.
Yes.
And um, Christine has the cutest dog in the world sitting just over her shoulder. Is Pumpkin?
Pumpkin is her name.
God, she's so cute. I'm not even much of a dog person, but she's adorable.
Thank you. She's
I'm
looking at
Leslie.
my snacks here.
She's looking at, oh yeah, well, that'll keep
I
her
got some snacks
attention.
over. Yes.
And I'm Christine Stephen Wolk is the co-host of the CTA podcast, and she also joins us here on Solid Ground every week. And Cari Bartholomew is our friend that we love to see and love to have conversation with. And as a matter of fact, the three of us have a whole trove of conversations that we've streamed in the past. So if that's something that you are interested in, they're under the Sanity Check playlist on this channel. And so many things to talk about today. Jay Adams, nice to see you. Mr. Morning Cigar, hello. Student of Rhythm, Randall, hey. And Jay Walkerson, nice to see you too. So let's see where to start. I guess we'll start just by introducing Solid Ground. We are a peer support community that we began in 2023. And so we've been going for 3 years now. We get together weekly. We have 4 groups every week, sometimes 5. And it's a chance for people to connect face to face online with other people who are also concerned about some of the things that have been happening in our world and our culture and politically. And you can check us out at Solid Ground Support at Substack if you'd like to join. We also do a members only, one of our groups meets right after this live stream every Monday. So we just keep the dialogue going. Whatever we've been talking about in the live stream, we welcome our members in. We stop recording, stop streaming, and continue the discussion. And those have been really great. So I'm grateful for everybody who shows up to those. And hi, Area Hermit Women and Paul McAuliffe and Dave. Nice to see you guys today. So, Cari, we were talking about the walkouts that have been happening in the schools, all these protests over ICE where teachers are getting students involved and putting students out on the streets with signs and this is during school hours. This is happening in a lot of places. We talked about this with Paul Rossi a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking about you. I think maybe you were in the chat during that conversation too. Um, and yeah, you're on the ground with a lot of stuff that's going on in schools as a parent advocate and as somebody who's really concerned about this stuff. So I'd love to open it up and see where you are with all of this and what you're seeing.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen that's been quite shocking is a lot of parents saying we're so proud of our kids using their First Amendment
Mm.
rights. Um, and I
That
think
blows
that
me away. I'm sorry. My shocked response. Wow.
so that's been really shocking, especially people who oftentimes I'm aligned with. So one thing that I've noticed is that we're only principled. Many people, and I don't consider this principled, but we're only quote unquote principled when it fits our agenda. Like we forget those principles the second it doesn't. So an example would be a lot of people hate Black History Month.
Mm.
Okay, but the second it turns into their culture's something, well, then it's okay to celebrate, right?
Mhm.
And so pretending that our kids are principled when they don't even have the full story. Nobody's standing out there holding signs, at least not here. Nobody's standing out there holding signs with all of the victims that have been, assaulted or killed. Nobody's holding those signs. It is just the people, the kids, wrapped, especially here, in his Mexican flags. They're wrapped in
Mm.
Mexican flags. And one of the things I saw that I found alarming was in my town, there was a counter protest. So the kids had pickup trucks with the MAGA flag
Mm.
and the Confederate flag. Now, I have a huge personal issue with that. I mean, I'm not from the South. I understand why people from the South feel that that's fine. But guess what? If you're a teenager in Payson, you probably don't have that allegiance to that flag. So to present, neither one of them have the right amount of knowledge, right? And so they're just like, yeah. And then these people are all like, we deserve to be here and we deserve everything. And one of the things that I've found quite shocking is I know teachers who have had Hispanic students tell them, and American Hispanic students tell them, your job is to work for me. You work so that I get benefits. And they've told that to their teachers, which is super disrespectful. But then the teachers still fall for the guilt thing. And that has been bad. And then the other thing is that I promise you, none of these kids know what a red guard is or know what Pol Pot or Mao or Stalin, anything. Even the Hitler brown shirts, I seriously doubt these kids know what any of them are. Mm-hmm. Because if they were, they would go, whoa, we look a lot like them. Mm-hmm. And then the kids, when the counter protests went down, they were throwing things, right? So we have had kids bust school district bus windows out. And then we have to remember that we heard years ago, we need to prepare for an angrier world. We know that our curriculum, I was just writing today about stupid Gavin Newsom and his comments about, I'm one of you guys, I can't read either, right? What? But all of this is about dumbing down our kids and turning them only into activists. Mm-hmm. And even if they are Hispanic kids and it's their abuela that they're worried about, right? They could easily be shown. I had kids in my classroom who came in, sweetest little girl. We're talking pigtails, the most innocent girl you could think of, right? She walks in the class and she goes, Mrs. B, is it true they're taking kids like me and sending them to different countries that they've never lived in? And it is not my job to answer her. That is not what ancient history is about. However, in ancient history, in Middle Egypt, they do conquer. And so we can have a discussion on, is there a difference between stealing land and conquering land? And then we can kind of grow to that place and we can say, is there a time? Because what they didn't want, the Middle Egyptians did not want the Nubians to take over their culture. And so they said, you know what, you can live here, we will absorb you in, but you cannot be rulers. And so being able to have that conversation and asking the kids, was that a fair thing? They take over their country and then they say, you can never be rulers in our country. And all the kids stand up and they go, no, that totally wasn't fair. And then as we get into the lesson, okay, well, but when they come, they're going to bring with them their beliefs. And their beliefs might not work with your beliefs. And here's who Egyptians worshipped. Here's who Nubians worshipped. How do we work that out? And so there is a way to make these kids moral and I'm trying to think of what it's a moral and something populous. Without those two things, you're fully unfit. But what is that? It's about being ruled in America. America cannot be ruled without it being I want to say moral and virtuous, but those are the same word, so it's not that word, but it's an informed populace, okay? Our children are not informed. We are at a place where they're following emotion only, and that emotion is utterly manipulated. So that's
are you still, do you still believe in public school at this point?
That's such a hard one because my son's about to graduate. And I do believe that
I can't believe that. Is he really? Wow.
Yeah.
I guess he's still 14 in my mind for some reason.
No, that's when we met, right? It was like, I've got a 4-year-old. So there are good things and there are good teachers. But I do believe that the system, people will say the system is broken. No, the system has an agenda.
Yeah, it's doing what it's supposed to do.
It is. And so, um, so the other thing is I got a call from a friend who is an asylum seeker. She's not here legally. Um, but she's desperate for asylum. The president of Venezuela has mentioned her name twice on television as a traitor to their country, because she stood up in school board meetings and she went to jail for 10 days. So she's here, and we're trying to help her. And her nephew is the most patriotic little guy. I'll send you guys, I'll send you the reels, but I interviewed him on Saturday, and he's a phenomenal kid. And he's like, look, my dad was kidnapped 3 times. After they sent pictures of all of me and my sisters at school, we knew it was time to leave. And so he goes, I think it's the funniest and the most ridiculous thing that these kids here call themselves, or believe that they're under a dictatorship. They don't know what a dictatorship is. And so I'm talking to this kid, and I'm promoting this, right? I'm saying people need to listen to this, watch it with your kids. And I've got teachers jumping on my page saying, you're lying. I teach here. This would never happen in Utah. Well, the other thing that's happening is my friend has to go and pick up her daughter who's crying in the bathroom because she's afraid that she's going to get in trouble for not protesting.
Mm.
And she's a middle schooler.
And she didn't want to do it. She didn't feel
want
like
to protest. No.
What was her reason? Was she just scared of it, or did she not believe in it? Was she conscientious objector?
She loves America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've only been here. They haven't been here that long, right? And they love America because, hey, they don't have to wonder. Like, he was telling me stories about, even when it wasn't violent, you would go to the grocery store, and his family owned 2 businesses. So they weren't poor, but they're like, middle class there is a totally different world than middle class here. Right. So there, he would go to the grocery store and his mom would tell him specifically, get 2 eggs, because you didn't know when your power was going to go off. So just in the terms of comfort, they feel better off here. But the idea, and take this, we have a lot of illegals in Utah. Like, we say we're not a sanctuary state, but I believe we will turn blue in the next election. That's a whole nother, we just had a petition to get something on the ballot, and now these groups are out-of-state groups funded by Soros, the Tides Foundation, are working to undo our petition. And they're like calling people and saying, hey, get your name off of it. So we're in a lot of trouble here. And people don't understand what socialism is. We have such an entitled culture that nothing is ever going to be enough. And they have no idea what government cheese is. And there will be a point when everybody says, I don't think I should have to work because that's just working for the man. When everybody feels that way, that government cheese will run out. And what I see in terms of these kids is they are absolutely being taught to hate. Mm-hmm. If somebody asked me, why do I teach? It would be, I teach so that kids are not taught to hate, period. That's it. You can have a totally different opinion in my classroom. Oh my gosh, we're talking, today we're going to do, was civil rights a good thing or a bad thing for Africa, for Blacks? And that'll be an interesting one, because I had different opinions before a couple months ago. But if they're not taught that everybody has value, and they're not, I mean, have you guys seen the video of the people who are saying, let's, you know, I don't want them in jail. I don't want a tribunal. I want them hung by their feet and gutted.
What is that about?
I'm sorry, you're really staticky. Are you
staticky really
for other people or just for me?
I don't know. Am I staticky for you, Christine?
I'm not, yeah, you're not staticky for me at all.
Okay.
Okay, it's probably just me. Okay.
Mhm.
Um,
What was that in reference to? That that quote?
that was in reference to anyone who supported the president and the quote unquote MAGA administration.
Okay. I was thinking maybe you were talking about the Epstein list
No,
because I'm
no,
seeing that kind of quote.
right.
Yeah.
I've seen some of that stuff and it's absolutely blowing my mind, but that's not what this is. And when it comes to that, I mostly stay silent because there's so many things locally that we need to be protecting.
Mhm.
Um, and but these kids are literally being taught. So another thing that happened is that I get home from teaching on Friday and I get a message from a parent in a public school, and it's a picture. And the picture went massively viral because libs of TikTok shared it. The picture says, "We are all immigrants," and she's put it on the side of her desk.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at it from a different standpoint because people are like, well, basically that's true. And I'm like, but it's not. I mean, I may be first generation American, I'm not positive, but most, I mean, there's many people who aren't, right?
Mhm.
And where else do you go? If you don't have a place that you can return to, then you're not an immigrant in the place that you're from
Mhm.
or that you live, right? And so, but the thing is that this very clearly tells you the teacher's sentiment. And it very clearly tells the kids, this is what my teacher believes. And the way in which the photo's taken, again, I wish I would have sent it to you guys, but the way in which the photo's taken, it is, it's obvious that the kid has snuck to take the photo. It's not just direct on, right? So it's an angle. So then that parent or the kid takes the picture, the child sends it to the parent sends it to me because they don't want to be contentious. What the hell? What is wrong, you guys? That parents are too afraid to stand up for their own kids.
I think I wonder about that too, because back to the whole kids and the protesting thing. I think I shared this last week with Paul Rossi, but a friend of mine, her daughter is in middle school and they lock the doors. So the campus is a closed campus. And there were a whole bunch of kids that went out to go protest ICE. Her daughter stayed behind. She didn't feel right doing that. And, that was whatever. They got a sub. Okay. So it was like, if you're going to go out and protest ICE, great. If you're a teacher, here's a sub. So the school administration was promoting that. And then she kind of asked me, well, I wonder how, she's sort of rhetorically, I wonder how all these kids got off campus when the gates are locked. And I said to her, because the administration is behind this. It's supporting this. It's so I made a comment to her, like, if I was a parent, I would sue these people, just because, that's time and money and whatever that your child isn't learning. And her response was like, yeah, I get that, but I've got a lot going on. And I think overall, parents are brushing this stuff off as like, well, I don't like it. I don't care for this, but, is it really that big of a deal? And I've got things going on. I'm glad my daughter didn't go out and protest. And I told her, that was the right thing to do. And at the same time, and that's the issue, like where we've talked about all these things on solid ground and sanity check, and it's come down to this whole, what is it that they're doing to keep us so distracted from going after what the end goals really are for this world, this country, the global end goal. And this is kind of another one of those things in some ways, because she's got lots of stuff to take care of as a mom, and she's a single mom, and this and that, and there's too much going on. And is it that big? We've never seen anything like this in the US. It'll never turn communist here. It'll never be, there's assumption after assumption after assumption. Meanwhile, whatever is happening on some other level, we're not paying attention to because we're stuck in the everyday spin of life. And I think a lot of parents get stuck in that life spin. And I'm not a parent, so I don't want to criticize that. Having kids is it's a big deal. It's a huge responsibility, the biggest responsibility you'd ever have. And I don't, pretend to understand the extent of that. I have nephews. I've seen my sister, struggle, but um, I just think that there's just it's like there's too much of this stuff, and the trans stuff's going on, and the CRT stuff is still happening, and the DEI is still happening, and where do you turn it's like your head is a swivel. And meanwhile, they're coming up with digital IDs for everyone, that they're going to, implant in you or somehow give you, what a card for. You won't be able to go anywhere without it. And those are much more dangerous initiatives, probably on a global level. But our heads are swiveling. And I think that's what happens with parents. So even though she didn't support it and was glad her kid didn't go, she just wasn't going to make a big fuss.
Yeah, I mean, what I wonder is, what is it going to take for people to pull their kids out of these schools? What is it going to take?
That's a good
You know,
question.
I've said this before. My first two kids, they went through public school all the way through graduation, kindergarten through graduation. And it was, I guess, let's see, somewhere in the 2012, 2013-ish time frame when they really started increasing these lockdowns at schools. And it would be like you said, the campus gets locked down. And I was told, you can't come and get your kid even if you want to on these,
Yes.
like, you cannot take your kid out. Well, that just did not sit well with me. But my kids were already in like middle school, high school, and I allowed them to keep going. And now I look back and I think that's when I should have pulled them out. I should have pulled my kids out as soon as they started to trample on parents' rights to that extent. That's my child. That's my child.
Mm-hmm.
You don't lock my child in a building and tell me I can't access her or him.
Mm-hmm.
And that should have been enough. I mean, they were doing active shooter drills.
Yes.
That's terrorizing your children.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much wrong with this. And somebody in one of our solid ground groups the other day asked me, what are some of the downsides of homeschooling? What are some of the challenges and the negatives? And I can make you a list. I can make you a good long list because there are some downsides and some challenges. But I still, at the end of the day, that is not an excuse to continue to hand your kids over to a system that is blatantly performing a cultural revolution, that is indoctrinating your children, that is hurting their attachments to their family, demoralizing them, terrifying them, terrorizing them. It's anti-education. This is turning your kids into a mob of charged up political activists. This is not educating your children, and it's not giving them apprenticeships or work experience that they can use to go. You get to 18, unless you are a self-motivated learner or have some connections through your parents to things outside of your school setting. You probably don't have a lot of skills. You probably don't know what the heck to do next. And so what do? You just keep chugging through the system that then becomes very expensive and laden, and you are debt laden at that point
Yeah.
because you have to start going, well, what do I do? I don't know. I can't really do anything. I'm not equipped by the 12 years of school that I've just done to do anything in the world. So I should just go to more school and I should just become a debt slave. And when you get out of that, well, that's when you're flipping burgers or working retail or doing something
Yeah.
with all that debt. It is a system that is not serving people well. And that complacency, like, I don't mean to, I'm not meaning to express a lot of angst towards your friend, but that kind of complacency is the reason that this thing keeps chugging along. It's not like there's millions of people who are super happy with the school system. There's millions of people who are dependent on it and aren't really sure what else to do and go, well, I guess it's not that bad. It's better than the alternative. I'm not going to make waves. I'm not going to cause a. If everybody who felt discontent with this were to just pull their kids out and pool their resources and figure something better out, we could get away from this much more quickly. And it really frustrates me. Like, what is it going to take? What's it going to
We are
take?
conditioned for comfort. So if it's inconvenient, people will not do it. And
That's right.
again, they don't know the end game of socialism. You know, people do it because they think that it's going to be an antidote to all of the problems. You know, is there a disparity of wealth? Uh-huh. But there is a difference between, like, our disparity, as this young man said, wealth in America versus wealth in an actual socialist country is totally different.
Right.
So maybe, but the thing is that one of the things that we've really taken away from our kids is a sense of gratitude, and we've replaced it with entitlement. Um,
Yes.
we've taken away the best books, the books that build universal character, and we have replaced them. I've told you guys this before. Little Women, The Secret Garden,
Mm-hmm.
Little Princess, all of those classical books that we all loved, they've gutted them, and in replace in those books, they've put social justice. So books that were literally about, oh wow, I'm an orphan. I've got no family, you know, I'm a miserable human being. Remember Mary Lennox is like, she's yellow. She's such a miserable person. And she learns how to like love and care for other people. That is a common thread that we should all have. But instead they replace it with social justice and queer ideology, which is the same. So it's all this theory and this theory and this theory constantly in everything put to our kids. So I think that where we're at is we're demoralized.
Mm-hmm.
And every day you have to try not to be. And I will tell you, so the pluses of homeschool, the majority of these kids are happy. Now, my where I work, my classes are the same size as a public school classroom. They're
Mm-hmm.
huge. Um, and do I deal with permissive parenting where, you know, they can't handle a test? Yes, they can. And so I just tell that kid, and I just had one of those kids who's like, I can't do a test. I'm quitting your class because of a test. And I was like, I don't know why you think that. Every every week I ask you the same questions in review. I ask review questions from the week before, and you always nail them. I take those review questions and put them into a test. And he was the only one who got 100% last week. But, you know, if I just gave them their way, he would have just, you know, colored. This teenager would have just colored instead of taking the test. And I was like, I think you can do this. And he did. So, and some people might say, well, that's, you know, that's not giving you parents' rights, but they signed up for my class. And then this is a requirement in my class. Like we have quizzes, we have tests. Um, but the other thing is that because you're dealing with all sorts of different kinds of parenting, some kids are going to thrive. They're going to go home and they're going to read a million different books. Have you heard that they're now? I've only heard this. I don't have proof, but that they're red flagging parents who get too many books at the library as homeschoolers, as potential homeschoolers.
What? Why would that even be a red flag? What is that? Who's tracking that?
Because you're not teaching the right things. It was just
Well,
somebody
it's a
on
money
Instagram. He
issue
had like,
too. The school
what'd you say?
district, it's a money issue too. The school district gets paid per child that attends school per
Yes.
class. And so if you don't show up to class, the district is not going to pay for that kid. So this is a money machine as well. And that's part of what is motivating them to end, or not end, but at least put a stop to, whatever, to try to regulate homeschooling or minimize it, because
Mhm.
they lose money that way. That's why, if all of those parents, as you said, Leslie, took their children out, the schools would collapse. That would be the end of it, because they
Right.
would not be able to sustain, they wouldn't have the financial funds to sustain keeping their doors open. And if that happens, that's when maybe real change might be possible, but everybody's got to do it. It
Mhm.
can't just be a couple of people, that are lighting the way. It's got to be done in mass.
Yeah, there's
Right.
kind of
And
a
it won't be.
dangerous middle. Like if you have just a few people doing it, well, we can let that just go.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a ton of people doing it, well, then they can't prevent it. You've got the power. But if you
Hmm.
have something in the middle, you start to be a real threat, but they're still powerful enough to push back,
Yes.
regulate. And that's, I
But
feel like, where we are.
they're also
Yes.
not leaving homeschoolers alone. We have bills that are saying, um, especially because people take funding for homeschool, right? I actually am not a strong
Oh,
advocate for that.
I don't,
But
that not
if
in
people take
Washington.
funding for homeschool, they're saying then it
Yeah.
needs to be taught,
Mhm.
it needs to be led by a public school trained teacher. So they did the same thing with, or they're pushing forth this bill right now. We did a lot of work in the last 4 years to get egregious porn. It's called the Bright Line Rule out of schools. Egregious. We're talking snuff, okay? And really bad stuff.
In
Um,
schools? Oh my God.
yeah. And so getting that out of our schools, and a legislator who, it's obvious that he is, in partnership, not with the American Library Association, but one that's similar. Um, and he says, well, those decisions, whatever parents bring forth, first, it needs to be limited what they can bring forth. And secondly, those things must be approved by a librarian with a master's degree. All right. 10 years ago, I could agree with that. Looking at the American Library Association today, I do not agree with that.
No, not at all.
And it's today, someone had posted, I think it was Corey DeAngelis, I think, um, posted that a teacher was saying that the whole point of college is to get these kids moving towards socialism. And this is what they were saying on a forum conversation. A teacher is just saying that that is the goal of college. So I'm horrified by these things. But the most thing at this level is all of the social control moves towards progressivism. I told you guys before there was some woman who tried to say that I was a DEI trainer in reverse. I'm
Hmm.
not,
Hmm.
right? Because DEI always pushes towards progressivism.
Mhm.
Always. That is the goal. The goal is global socialism.
Mhm.
And if you don't want that for your kids, no, they probably shouldn't be there. Or at the very least, if they are there, then you better have conversations until they're rolling their eyes and going, I know, mom.
Hmm.
Because without that, um, there's so much. There's, the little sign on the side of this person's desk. My son's choir singing a song called No Fences.
I don't know this one.
Yeah, it's created, and it's like we will be at peace when there are no fences, there are no
Hmm. So
borders.
no
Since the beginning of time,
borders.
there were
Oh God.
no fences.
Yeah. No
So,
borders.
but this is no different than what they do in Soviet countries when they would, or in Mao's China, they would have a choir that would sing songs praising the ideals of what they wanted. It's
Mhm.
no different than that. That's what we're facing right now. And are we going to wake people up? I think we're going to do it like starfish.
I
I
think that's the only way.
Yeah, it's a person by a person. It's things like this. Like I have another interview at 7 tonight specifically because all I'm trying to do is throw the starfish in, and people are like, "Oh, she's gearing up for another political campaign." No, I would never run again. I
Mm.
think that most politicians, either side, are driven by greed, and progressives come on the right and the left.
Hmm.
And I don't want any of that because progressivism, I mean, they say things like you got to crack some eggs to make an omelet. I don't want to be an egg.
Utilitarianism. That's
Hmm.
utilitarianism. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't want to be an egg. I don't want our kids to be eggs.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I worry about the most with these stupid protests is they're always looking for good trouble, beautiful trouble. They're always looking for that. So the first kid who gets seriously damaged. And what I've been saying lately is, do you want your kids to be the next Tyler Robinson? Is that what you want for your kids? Because when you teach kids to be activists, it escalates.
Hmm.
Cari, do you have conversations like this with parents whose kids are in school? I mean, what is the reaction to these kinds of things? I mean, are they hearing you out? Are they not? Are you able to even get to a point where you can have a conversation with these parents?
One-on-one.
It's
One-on-one, a parent will call me who's like, look, a year ago I thought you were crazy. Now I need to talk to you. Right.
Okay.
Um, then I am reaching out to, like, yesterday there was a pastor, and it just happened to come through on my Facebook feed, but there was a pastor talking about the responsibility of parents to raise their children. And no matter what kind of schooling they have, that they need to be raising them. And he was very blunt. And I'm going to go and speak at his church to his congregation. And so, people who are ready to listen. I have different kind of conversations with different people. I never lie about like what my principles are, but there are people who can only handle milk, and in milk, I just say, wow, over here, there's this amazing charter school that will give your kids a classical education. And by the time they get into ninth grade, they will have everything they need to be able to make it into a college. So there's
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
not scary
Mm-hmm.
thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
In the homeschool world, I'm like, protect homeschool. Just
Mm-hmm.
protect homeschool. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And for the warriors, yeah. If warriors, like you guys had, who did you recently have on? Julie, from Color.
Julie Barrett. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know Julie.
Mhm.
I know Julie from Washington. And also we're in the same kind of advocacy network. Um, and so that's a warrior mom. And you can have those conversations with them. But you have to understand that most people, kind of like me with the civil rights and understanding how absolutely, utterly communist it was, and how its big goal was to get huge government. That was the goal. When they defined what rights are, there you go. Right. And when I first heard that, you guys, when I first met you, my podcast was called Martin's Daughter.
I remember.
Because I wanted to be a little Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And this is taking out the whole, like, his misogynistic
Mhm.
sexcapades. And
Yeah.
this goes straight into his feelings about communism. And that's where I go, whoa, right. But to hear that was painful, because I thought I'm a little Martin Luther King, kind of like I'm a Charlie Kirker. That's what I thought. That's who I am. And then I was like, oh, but I'm not. I'm not that.
Mhm.
And it is exhausting. It is demoralizing. And I'm so grateful for Yuri Bezmenov for explaining what it was that we would see, because then you can go, oh, I learned something. And I don't know if we talked about it last time, but I learned, and this is what's going on across everything. Um, Tactical empathy,
Hmm.
using people's empathy. Real empathetic people say, oh, I see you hurting. How can I help you? Tactical empathy, go, oh, I see you hurting. How can I use you?
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
And that's what they're doing to our kids.
And some of these parents are afraid. I mean, I know another family where the kid's like, Dad, Mom, Dad, if I write the essay according to what I really think and believe, I'm going to get an F. I need to write the essay according to what the teacher has told us in class in order to pass the class. Well, the parents were like, okay, just grin and bear it, and get it over with. And we'll talk about what the real truth is. But they were afraid that their kids would end up flunking out of these classes if they actually sat down and had kind of real conversations, and the kids came back and were, I don't want to say argumentative, but like, contradicted what was being taught in the class. So
Right.
that's a component too, I feel like.
It is.
You know, your kid will not, I mean, your kid will not pass that essay if you are telling the truth.
Well, and that's the
because
same in graduate school.
it's the
I
same
mean,
in graduate
like
school. Yes.
we've talked about this a ton with the counseling programs, and I'm in
Yes.
groups of counselors and counseling students frequently. And this is something that is just openly acknowledged. You're going to have to lie. You're basically going to have to play the game if you want the degree. And if you have to do that when you're an adult in pursuing a professional career and you're in grad school and you're worried about that at that point, well, think about what that's like for those little kids. I mean,
Right.
Yep.
they're just,
They're being abused.
I just like, when do people just stand up and say enough is enough?
They
We
were
just,
slow boiled. They were
yeah,
slow, and
slow
I also
boiled,
think there's
but it's
a
boiling now. I mean, it's boiling. Like what the
I
hell
also
is
think
wrong
there's
with
an
people? It's so
embarrassment.
frustrating.
I
Hmm.
mean, I've got
Mhm.
family members who do not talk to me, right? I mean, there's an
Mhm.
embarrassment because they're like, I had a family member who said something, just it randomly came out. He goes, well, that's because we live in a Soviet society.
Mhm.
And he said they're brainwashing the kids. But then when I tried, once he said that, I thought, oh yes, I got one. And then I tried to talk to him more, and it was, nope, this is it. And I know for a fact that this person, like his wife has said, you guys can't be so public because your name, is our last name. And it's just like tough,
Mhm.
tough, because if you won't stand for your kids, I'm going to.
Yeah,
That's it. But now the kids feel the same way. Our kids, the other thing, if they're not activist, they are they're apathetic,
Yes.
which is
the
horrifying too.
collector here, the collector IBLE says the reason people don't speak up more is because when people like me do, we are turned into pariahs. I agree. I mean, they do. They make examples out of people, but I don't know. I
But
mean,
I went I
go
went
ahead.
to a couple of school board meetings. I don't have kids, but I figure, hey, I'm a taxpayer, so it's my right to comment on what's happening here. And I had all these parents that were supporting what I was saying and backing me up, but they would not go up to the microphone and say it themselves.
Yep.
So I was sort of this,
They need a
talking
champion.
piece. Right. That's what they needed. And not only would they not do it themselves, they were exchanging emails among each other using code language and code names and code whatever, so that in case they were ever caught or the email was leaked, it would never be attached to their names, them personally. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is like, it is like a communism, and you cannot have the dictator find out or they'll have your head. And that's how these parents are already acting. So we're already there at that boiling point, as
Yes,
you
we
said,
are.
Leslie, because parents aren't always even comfortable revealing their identities for fear of backlash. What does that say?
I know.
That's where we're at. And I wish that weren't the case. And I don't think it's over. I do think that in November it probably will be. Um, I do. I think that
What do you mean in
these people.
November? What do you think is going to happen in November?
So Susan Rice, she was part of
Uh-huh.
Barack Obama's people, have said that once they have power again, retribution is on the line, and they're like, we're no longer going to play nice. And I'm like, oh, we're the last 4 years nice. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, no, yeah.
So, and they're like, anybody who supported any of this, we are coming for you.
Mhm.
So I do understand. I think that people being locked in, 6-foot jail cells for 4 years without due process gave people a message. I think that people who have beautiful homes, I live
Not
in
to
what I
turn this
call.
into a political thing, but they have more guts, and they're
Yes,
willing to jail people. They're willing to perp
yes,
walk. They're willing to
yes,
do shit. Excuse my language. They're willing to do things that the other side, and I'm not either side. Okay. I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I'm neither of those two things. But what I will say I have noticed is on the one side, they tend to be much more willing to do those kinds of things and to say that's it, we're on a rampage and coming for you. The other side does not play that at all. They're shaking in their boots. And
Mm.
again, we don't have to keep this political. I don't want to, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's something when you mentioned that about Susan Rice, I mean, it's just something that I've noticed is the other side tends to shake in their boots and not do a whole lot of putting people behind bars who are clearly involved in fraud, who are clearly involved in things that are beyond illegal,
Right.
extortion. I mean, all sorts of different, you know, types of things. And they're not, it like disappears into thin air. I mean,
They
they took
want
the
to win.
Minneapolis,
Right.
that's what it is.
Like
They took
they
the
seek to
Minneapolis
conquer.
thing, right, and they turned it into ice. What happened to the fraud that was also found out there? The 1,800
Right.
whatever $1 million, whatever. That's just evaporated, and now no one is responsible or held liable. That's
Right.
the other issue I have is that
And that those are things that are not presented to these kids. You
no,
know, oh, guess what? You're going to lose opportunities. There's
Well,
certain
none
things
of
that
it
you're
should
not
be
going to be able to.
presented to the kids. None of it
no,
should. I mean, all of this
no.
is really confusing. It's a whole bunch of he
If
said,
they're
she
going to
said.
protest, then I feel like they
Shouldn't
should know.
be, they shouldn't be protesting.
Agreed.
I mean,
Agreed.
They shouldn't
the
be
kids,
protesting
the
to
kids,
begin with.
if an individual feels moved to protest something, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah.
But there's this kind of like guided protesting, this activism.
Mhm.
It's a serious malfunction of the system. I mean, this is abuse of your kids at this point
Well,
because
and when school
all
board
of this,
members, yeah,
all of these issues are so much more complex than
Mhm.
yes,
the shouting match that's happening. I like Ray 7707 in the chat said when you said that you were on neither side, Christine, he said
Mhm.
non-binary. So
Oh, you're
are,
right.
are we politically non-binary maybe?
I guess
Uh,
so.
because I certainly see that. I certainly see the political regime as a big farce in order to get us to engage with it. It's bread and circuses. It's just a
yes.
way.
It's one
It's
party anyway at
But
this
don't you
it's
point.
think
one
that
party.
kids deserve to know? When I say kids, I'm
Yes.
talking high schoolers, right? I
Mhm.
feel like they deserve to know what a bread and circus is, what that means.
Maybe, but I really think what they should be doing is they should be an apprentice somewhere, or they should be reading good books, or they should be doing something else. This the brilliance of Jordan Peterson when he came on the scene with his clean your
Mhm.
room message
Yes.
is get your own resources and skills lined
Yes.
up before you start worrying about fixing the problems of the world.
Right.
How
But
can these
but
young
then,
people, what is the point of feeding kids a bunch of anxiety that the 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds don't know how to resolve? What the hell are we doing getting 17-year-olds who don't even know how to hold a job involved in
well,
knowing
my thing
about
is they're
that?
going to be voting, or not, and either way is
Yeah,
still a
but
vote.
either way, they it's like there's a hierarchy of skills. They need to learn their basic skills before they start to worry about world politics or the national scene. There is no reason for you to be worried about that stuff before you know how to do your laundry and earn a paycheck.
So
Learn
I
your
believe
basic
that in
skills
the next,
first.
I believe that in the next, coming up very soon, the Equality Act will come back. When the Equality Act comes back, people will not have a right
What's
to worship.
what's the Equality Act?
Oh, the Equality Act is, in a nutshell, if somebody, it's protecting, it's like civil rights on steroids. So if somebody goes into your church and doesn't feel comfortable, your church can be closed down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so these are the reasons why I think that 18-year-olds do need to understand these things because they are old enough to vote and they should be voting to protect their rights. When you guys say politics, I agree with you. Like
Mm.
the Uniparty, especially because I live in Utah and it is like Rhino Central. I think that I vote based on who's going to let me keep my freedom to worship because my freedom for me, my freedom to worship and to go to church and to believe what I believe freely is about my existence after this life. That's how I
Well,
feel. And so
I don't
people
disagree
who
with
would
what you're
take that
saying.
away, we got to
I
fight.
don't, I see the wisdom in what you're saying, and yet saying, well, we need to teach them because if we don't teach them, the other side will. it's like either way, you're talking about weaponizing the minds of people who are not formed yet as people who need to be. And so on principle, I would say that there's that outside entities, the public, government, any kind of group has no business indoctrinating the minds of other people's children.
Yeah, in
And
public
so
school, I definitely feel that way.
I
But
don't
Well, you
think that,
shouldn't even be
well,
voting at 18. The
I
voting age
don't
should
think,
be, that's the voting age should be 21
well,
minimum, in my
and I honestly
opinion.
think only landowners should be able to vote anyway. Only
I
people who
Mhm.
own homes. If you
I
don't,
totally agree with
so,
that. I
but
totally agree with
yeah,
that.
they don't, 18-year-olds have no business
But
voting.
some
Mm-mm.
are our
They're,
ideals, right? Like
and
some
we also
are this,
should,
we feel this way should be it, but that's not the way that it is. There, the
I think
Democrats are
public school
pushing for
should be
16-year-olds to
abolished
vote.
after
Mhm.
elementary school. Like if you want to do public elementary schools, maybe there's some purpose in that. We should have kids come together and read and write and learn some basic math. Maybe I'm not even too keen on that. But secondary school, we should not have. There should be, that is all about cultural indoctrination. And the smallest
Yeah,
unit of
I agree.
culture is the family. And that at
Mhm.
that point, that is the point when the
Mhm.
But
parents should be able
so
to
is
transmit.
elementary school. That's the issue, is that a lot of this, I mean, if you look at a maze, we've done that before. We've looked at amaze.org. So comprehensive sex ed in elementary school,
Oh, they should never
even
be teaching any children anything
teaching the
about
kids
sex
to
whatsoever.
protest. They
Yeah.
started off with kindergartners protesting because they wanted chocolate milk. I saw that last year in my own district. Somebody put it up on the public page and said, "We're so proud of these kids. They wanted strawberry milk. They wrote their letters and now they're getting their strawberry milk on Fridays." And everybody's like, "Oh, and it's like, no, you guys
But that's
taught them,
not even
especially."
psychologically good for a kid. Even if you talk about psychological development, they're in positions where they're taking on these adult issues and they don't have the cognitive sophistication yet. Their brains aren't fully formed. They still need and rely on containment and an anchor in something. These kinds
Yeah,
of things are beyond what they can even really comprehend in a multifaceted, complex way. So we're putting on these kids all of these big ideas, big issues, adult things that we hardly understand ourselves, and at the same time, they're too young to be able to process and understand the ramifications of several kinds of big policy decision
Mhm.
type things. They just don't get it yet because their brains aren't formed to get it yet.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know
and
what
I
I'm
think the
saying?
temptation is to go into an arms race for those brains. And I don't think that we should be
yeah.
doing that. I think we have no business doing that whatsoever. Help little kids if you want in collective education settings to learn, but the only people paying for that should be the parents. Taxpayers have no business paying for other people's children to be educated. That makes no sense at ever whatsoever. Give us back all of our money
Mm-hmm.
and let us figure out how to do with our own resources what we should do. Set up, community education pods. That's fine. That makes sense. But all this political education, all this social studies, that that is best handled by kids learning for themselves how to interact with other children and learning from their parents what their morals and values are. This schools have no business teaching about sex, and they have no business teaching about race and all of this stuff. And Carrie, I'm super interested about in your civil rights. Um,
I was about to pull it
we
up
have like
actually.
5 minutes left if you have time to share with us a little bit of your critique of civil rights.
Sure. Yeah. So I was about to pull up the questions, just kind of the questions that I'm going to ask. Now these are not, how do I put this? Okay. So they move just like they do with Peter Boghossian, right? They move around the room and then they talk. So all I do is ask the questions and let them talk and go, oh, okay. Does anybody agree? Does anyone want to move, change their position after this person has talked? So here's the first one. The civil rights movement was morally necessary. Then they move. Um, it permanently expanded the civil rights movement permanently expanded federal power beyond its original constitutional scope. Government intervention in civil rights was justified because voluntary social change had failed. Forced integration solved legal inequality, or forced integration weakened organic community institutions. Expanding civil rights required coercion because entrenched injustice does not dismantle itself peacefully. So those are kind of the questions. And then the kids move. Now, these are thoughtful kids, right? So it's not like, could you, and sometimes they will say, can you explain that? You know, can you clarify that for me? Which is fine. But again, I see these kids as future adults. And I think that understanding these concepts, especially before they go off to a college that is going to instill socialism, is important. I don't even, where I fall on this list, and I watched a 3-hour interview with Chad Shadow something. He made the films, Uncle Tom 1 and 2, and another person. Both of them would call themselves conservative African Americans, but one feels that Martin Luther King, we shouldn't bring up his bad because he did a lot of good, and the other feels like his bad is much more serious than womanizing. And so where I fall in between those two, I'm still working that out. Okay, because I'm grateful that I could marry who I wanted to. And I'm grateful that, you know, I don't have to simply be a domestic, which would be awful for anybody I worked for. But I'm grateful for those things. But knowing that nearly all, if not all, of Martin Luther King's speechwriters, including I Have a Dream, all of them were Marxist, bothers me a lot. I that is something that has been like, how do you reconcile that? And I have one student who last year decided to do a wax museum on Martin Luther King. There are people who will say that nothing that he did was Christian. He openly says in his own words that he did not believe in the core concepts of Christianity. And they brought in social justice. Now, another big issue for me is the difference between people who follow Booker T. Washington, who said, pick up your bucket. And you know, work now, do the things that you can now and be excellent at them. And eventually people will come to truly respect you. I'm sorry, but I agree with that far more than forcing people to respect you, because respect could easily be replaced with resentment. And I think it is. I think that when you shove something down someone's throat and you've got somebody who has not earned their respect, and people can say, oh, well, people are just born with dignity. To a certain level, yes. But if your dignity is nothing but bullying and treating people like absolute cow manure, then I don't think you have anything. For me, I am a person who will step right over you. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in engaging. And I know that's not, you know, people will say, well, that's not very mature for a critical thinker. And I'm like, I've seen it. I've seen it play out. I mean, I have some place that I'm going to tell Elizabeth Freeman's story at. And they're like, can I have a picture in your bio? And I'm like, no, I'll just show up as Elizabeth Freeman and then I'll leave. Because I'm afraid. Because my views are not acceptable,
right,
in the social justice cult. And I believe in humanity. I believe in the human spirit. I believe the human dignity, not in the racial identity stuff. So it's torn, because it would have taken longer. It may have been to the point where when I was born, I couldn't go and eat in a restaurant, you know? It could have been that we didn't have the wonderful break that we had, the respite that we had in the 80s. All of that is true. But I think that if we would have all picked up our buckets where they were, we'd have a lot more long-term respect. And that's what I think. So, now where I'll get with the kids, I have no idea because they will lead it. Those are the questions. They move around, they say what they think, they discuss with each other. The big thing is that they learn to listen to differing opinions without hating each other.
Mhm.
That is my big thing. And then next week we have a congressman coming to talk to them who is African American. And then the week after, what I do is then I'll give them like evidence of the different places. So yeah, I mean, I would say that what we do is more of a college level, especially today, thing. The parents pay for it, the kids choose it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's different than, I get no money from taxpayers.
A
Mm-hmm.
couple of comments here. The collector IBLE says Carob is 100% right on this. If people aren't receptive to the message, they aren't going to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's 97 cents is arguing with me about my suggestion that communities should be allowed to pool their resources and educate their children. He's saying that's basically public school. Well, I disagree because forcible tax collection is very different than pooling your resources. I mean, if your company says, I'm going to pull from your paycheck $2 every time because we are doing birthday parties for all the employees in this company and you're going to have to pay for it. That's very different than you and a few of your friends at work deciding that you
Right.
want to put some money in and buy flowers for one of your coworkers.
Right.
So, we are at time right now, and we're going to pop over to the members only portion of this discussion. If you guys are interested in joining us, just sign up at Solid Ground Support on Substack, and we would love to have you be a part of the conversation in our discussion groups. Let's see. Oh yes, please like the video if you liked anything about the video. That's really helpful. So hit the like button. And Cari, tell people where they can find you before we switch over.
Sure. Across all platforms, Carib Marcel / Cari Bartholomew. It's complicated. Be not afraid.
Excellent. And I'll put a link in the description for everybody after I have a chance to update this later today. And thank you all so much for being part of the discussion today. We will look forward to seeing you next Monday.